So one of the first things you'll notice about this lesson is that I've split it into two parts. Let me go ahead and zoom in just a little bit here. I've split it into two parts. So those two parts are number one, 28a, and then tomorrow will be, or rather the next day, will be 28b. So we're going to start with 28a today and focus in on that. So the whole idea is that we're going to be solving these multi-step problems with tape diagrams and equations. They're going to be some pretty big problems to start out. And I'm going to give you some strategies that if you do not do, it's going to make it really, really unlikely for you to grow in your ability to solve these problems. So let's go ahead and take a look at number 2, and we'll see how we can gradually move problem to problem and see how you improve. So let's take a look. Here we go. So I've got some Russian names here. Let's see if we can keep track of all this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put down what we know. That's what Pudwick right here stands for. Put down what we know. So Vladimir's gained 20 pounds since last year. He now weighs 120. So Vlad, that's what we can call him for short. Vlad gained 20 pounds. And he now weighs, so this is more Vlad, he weighs, not an apostrophe, get that out of there. He weighs 120 pounds now. Now, Sergey, right here, Sergey, he is 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry. So we have 3 people we're working with here. Sergey is 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry. Just abbreviate with Dim. So far we've got this. Vladir's gained 20 since last year. He now weighs 120. Sergey is 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry. Let's keep going. If Sergey and Vladimir weighed the same amount last year, so Sergey, same, I know he is the same as Vlad last year. So they were the equal weights last year. But remember, we don't know how much Vlad weighs, last year at least. We know now he's 120, but he's gained 20 pounds since last year, so we're going to have to figure out what he weighed last year. So Sergey is 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry, and Sergey and Vladimir weighed the same amount last year. So we're going to figure out how much Dmitry weighs, and I mean, while we're at it, we're going to figure out what all the rest of them weigh anyways. So the main thing here is to take it one step at a time. So let's start with what we know, right? I know Vlad gained 20 pounds since last year. So here, if I say this is Vladimir from last year, I know he has gained a total of 20 pounds. He's gained 20 pounds. So that's a total of, what did it say? He now weighs 120 pounds. So here's Vladimir's. This is going to help us solve for him. Let's see what else we know. We know Sergey is 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry. So let's draw something for Sergey. So here's Sergey. And he's Dmitry's weight. However, he is Dmitry's weight, but he is 15 pounds heavier. So I have to add 15 pounds on to Sergey to figure out how much he weighs. We know Sergey also, so let's see what we've used. Vladimir gains 20 pounds. We showed that right here, so we used that. He weighed 120 pounds, or he weighs 120 pounds now. That's why I made the whole thing. So I used that information, right? Sergey is 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry. We showed that right here. Dmitry plus 15 gives us Sergey. But we also know Sergey is the same as Vladimir last year. So that means Vladimir last year, that's this bar over here. We don't know what that equals yet. So we've got some figuring out to do. So let's see if we can figure some of this out. So you can publish this down here, or you can publish it up there, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to, for proximity's sake, I'm just going to solve it close together. So right here, this represents V plus 20. And it says if you take Vladimir and you gain 20 pounds, he's going to end up this year at 120 pounds. And so let's look over here. This one says D, Dmitry, and if you gain 15 pounds, you'll end up with what Sergey weighs, which is what Vladimir weighed last year. Kind of lots of different names here. So let's keep going through here. How would I solve this? Well, right now, you could probably walk through and solve this real quick. Pause for like 30 seconds and solve this one. Figure out what V is equal to. And go ahead and take a look on pausing. I know I can subtract 20 over here to make it equal to just V. Here, I can say I have to balance it, right? So if I take away 20 from one side, I have to take away 20 from the other. So it means last year, Vladimir weighed 100 pounds. So again, this is Vladimir's weight. Vlad's weight last year. And remember, read back through the problem and think about what we know. It says that Sergey and Vladimir weighed the same amount last year. So that means up here, this variable v represents Sergey, but also represents the 100. So we can say this is now d plus 15 equals 100. So think about what we know so far. We know Vlad weighed 100 pounds last year. We now know that that means Sergey weighs 100 pounds this year. And now we just got to figure out, well, what does Dmitry weigh? Well, we can solve this equation pretty easily. If I'm trying to get this so it equals just d, I would subtract 15 from both sides. And so what would I end up with? Here I'd end up with just the variable d. 100 take away 15 is 85. So now I can write a third sentence. I can say Dmitry weighs 85 pounds this year. So now we can check and see. So we know Sergey and Vlad have to weigh the same amount last year. They have to weigh the same amount, so they're both 100. But then we also know Vlad gains 20 this year, so he is 20 pounds heavier. So let's see if this makes sense. Is 100 plus 20 120? It sure is. And then finally, we know Sergey and Dmitry. We know Sergey needs to be 15 pounds heavier than Dmitry, right here. Well, I can check and make sure that's true. I can take 85 plus 15. And if I'm correct, I should get Sergey's weight. 5 and 5 is 10. 1 and 8 is 9. 9 and 1 is 10. So it checks out. So there's our answer for our first problem. As you can see, there's a lot to build up. And you're not going to do it right on the first step. But that's okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a look at the next one. It's on page 3. And I'm going to have you do a little bit more pausing in this video. A little bit more pausing. So here it is. Here's our second problem. And the biggest thing I want you to work on doing is reading through the problem. Honestly, like if you can do this much, you're going to be great. Reading through the problem, putting down some facts you know, and just drawing some tape diagrams for what you've represented. Solving it is really important. But if you can just pause it and try to Pudwick, try that. See what you can write down what you know. All right, so when I come back to this, I know that Marissa has twice as much as Frank. Back to some more familiar names, perhaps. And Christina has 20 more. Christina has 20 more than Marissa. So there's two things we know, right? And twice as much, this should make me think times 2, right? And then I also know Christina has $100. Well, let's start drawing some of this stuff. And then they give us some variables to represent everybody. Let's start with Marissa. She has got twice as much as Frank. So let's start with Marissa. Let's think about how I can draw Marissa. So if I've got Marissa here, I know I can say that she has twice as much as Frank's. So it means it takes 2 of the letter F. 2 Franks. Come on, camera, focus up. It takes 2 F's here to make what Marissa has. 2 F's to give me what Marissa has. But then I also know Christina has 20 more than Marissa. So if I draw this same size thing, right, for Marissa, I know Christina has this same amount, but then I know that she has 20 more than whatever she has, right? And then I know how much she has. It says Christina has $100. So I know this chunk of stuff right here is worth $100. And so now I think I can maybe start to figure out how much everybody has. So let's think here. This one looks like it's got the most number. Let's see if we can write some equations. So this just means 2 F's is the same thing as M. They match up, right? So that looks like it's going to be, we don't have enough numbers to solve there. This one tells me if you take M and you add 20 onto it, you'll end up with the $100 that Christina has. This one looks more doable. Looks like something I can figure out, right? So let's see if I can do this. So I'm going to start with, this is to find the amount of money, we know how much Christina has, right? This is Christina right here, the $100. So let's see if we can solve for Marissa. Solve for Marissa. And again, right now, and throughout the video, anytime you can pause and try it on your own, I would encourage you to do that. That's going to help you learn the most. You're going to do the best if you do that, I promise. I promise, I promise, I promise. So how do I make this equal to just M? Well, what would I need to do? I would need to take 20 away from both sides. So this stuff right here, that equals just M. 100 take away 20, that's going to give me 80. So Marissa has $80. Now we could solve with an equation here for Frank, but we also know something else, right? Well, let's see. First of all, here's Frank, right? We can find how much Frank has using this. We know 2 Franks give us Marissa's amount. Now we know what Marissa's is, right? We just figured out that Marissa has $80. Now let's think about this though. It says Marissa has twice as much as Frank. So if Marissa has 80 bucks, what is that twice as much as? You might know, okay, well, it's just gonna be 40. Well, let's double check and see. If we know that, we can solve here, and it should make out to 40. Let's see. Well, I would divide both sides by 2, because this means 2 times f. 2 times f divided by 2, that just gives me f. And then 80 divided by 2, that would give me 40. So that tells me that Frank has $40. Frank has $40. So there's our answers. That's what makes sense. Now, again, we said Marissa should have twice as much as him. Is $40 times 2 equal to 80? Yes, it is. And then we know Christina has 20 more than that. What's 20 more than 80? It is 100. That's what we are told. So this is kind of our third example we've worked through now. Lots of pausing, lots of things to try to stop and try to learn as much as we can. So now, one more thing. Now this one, I want you to try to Pudwick. I want you to try to translate into tape diagrams. And when you come back to the video, I want you to have spent like at least 7 or 8 minutes really struggling with the problem and really have some answers down about what you think it is. And you know what? If you want to try some strategies other than what I have, like this stuff, you can try some other strategies. Make them work. But if at the end of the video you don't have these, add these in to go along with yours, and also decide for yourself, are my strategies, do they make sense, or do I need to maybe try some different stuff? So different stuff works, but I want you to try to include as much of it on your page as you can. So I'll just read through it with you, and then I'll have you pause the video and do as much as you can to solve on your own. So here it says, Raina is twice as old as Madeline, and Laura is 10 years older than Raina. Or maybe that's Rayanna. If Laura is 50 years old, how old is Madeline? So there's all kinds of stuff to figure out here. Try to put down what you know, try to draw it out, try to solve the problem, all on your own this time. All right, so first thing I know, Raina, twice as old as Madeline. That's one thing I know. What else do I know? Laura is 10 years older than Rayanna. And then I also know on top of that, I know that Laura is 50 years old. So we want to know, how old is Madeline? Okay. Well, if you didn't put that down, at least get that written down and see if you can start to draw some of this. Think about how this should look pretty familiar, right? We know Raina is twice as old as Marissa. That means it takes double Marissa's to get Rayanna's age. So here's Rayanna. We also know that Laura is 10 years older than 10. That doesn't make sense. Laura is 10 years older than Rayanna. So that means this same amount, right? If you take that same thing, you take Rayanna, and Laura's 10 years older than her. 10 years older, so 10 years longer, right? So here's Laura. And we know how old she is. How old is Laura? It said that she is 50 years old. So at this point, now I want you to take your tape diagram, see if you can kind of start to solve here. All right, well, I'm going to try this. Let's see. I know I've got R, one of these R's. 1R equals 2M's. Doesn't look like I've got enough to solve there. Remember, Rayanna, she's twice as old as Madeline. Let's try the next one. Okay, I have R, and it shows 10 being added to it because she's 10 years older. And when you do that, you get 50 years. So let's solve these two equations and see if that helps us. So it looks like R plus 10 minus 10. If I take away 10 from this side, I have to do the exact same thing to the other side. So it's actually R equals 40. So that means I know Rayanna is 40 years old. So far I've got that much, right? And that makes sense, right? Because Laura's got to be 10 years older than her. If she's 40 and Laura is 50, right? That's a 10-year difference. That makes sense. Let's look at the next one. So we know what Rayanna's age is, right? We know she's 40 years old. We just figured that out down here. We said R equals 40. Okay, R is 40. Put a 40 in there. Okay, well, how can I make 2M so it's just M? Because that'll tell us Marissa's age, right? Well, this means 2 times M, so let's divide by 2. Both sides, make sure you balance it out. What's 40 split in half? That's 20. So that must mean Marissa is 20. She's definitely the youngest one, 20 years old. Now think about some of the things that we know. We know Rayanna is twice as old as Madeline. Twice 20, that's 40. We also know that Laura is 10 years older than Rayanna. So what's 10 years older than 40? Well, that's 50. And that's what Laura's age is. So you can use the problem to sometimes help you check your work. Again, you might not have had some of the same stuff I had here. What I want you to do is check, well, does my work make sense? If it does, great, keep it. If it doesn't, maybe cross it out. And then if you don't have what I have, add it in, because then you can become an expert in multiple ways. And the more ways you are an expert, the better off you'll be.